everyone, this is Mario again, coming at you with another review, and it's another entry in Monster Fest. Hold on, let me adjust the camera real quick. Just adjusting the focus a little bit more. Today's review is a sequel to the last review you saw up, and like that last one, it is a movie that me and my buddy Jeffrey watched over a week ago at the time of this recording, and like the other one, we tried to do a commentary for it, and like before, Callgraph basically gave us the finger, but I've actually cleaned out stuff on my desktop, so maybe it'll work now, I don't know. But anyway, the film is, I will say, slightly underrated because it got negative critical marks, and I think it has a following on IMDb, at least somewhat. I mean, yeah, it got a 4.8. It could be like, it could be a little bit higher. It could be at least a 5.3, but it has a sort of following. But on Rotten Tomatoes, it gets worse. It gets a 14% with critics. But the film I'm talking about is, of course, the second sequel to Tobe Hooper's influential film, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre III. Yes, I finally have it in my DVD collection. Now the only DVDs I don't have are the beginning and the other one, which I will not get that one unless it's. I will not get 4 unless it's a gift from someone, because I don't want to have that in my collection. I bet someone's gonna say, but you have the Leprechaun series in your collection. You have all the Friday the 13th films, all the Nightmare on Elm Street films, and a bunch of other horror sequels and stuff that aren't up to snuff, but you won't put Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4 in your collection? I have standards, after all. But it has a 50% with the fans on Rotten Tomatoes, so Rotten Tomatoes it has a little bit more, so it's about around the same, so it has some fans. It looks like a film that you'll 50-50 like or hate. And of course, the theatrical poster says the most controversial horror film ever is now here. And there's some truth behind that, because this film did have some controversy, which mostly because of the ratings, because this is the last film to get the X rating before it was re-rated R, and this was before they replaced X with the NC-17. And some of this, I'm guessing, Effrey told me when we were doing the commentary, I'm guessing it's from the special features, which I haven't seen all of them yet, but I've watched some of them, like the extended ending and some of the deleted scenes. Now we'll go into that first. As you all know, there was some shady backstage stuff involving the first film, involving the mob or something, people not being paid, so there was lawsuits when they were discovered. It was basically just a front. So the rights of the first film changed, and eventually New Line got their hands on. I mean, they didn't produce this first sequel, from what I understand, but they produced this one. And they produced this near the end of the age of slashers, because I would consider the 80s the age of slasher horror films. If you go through all the list, the 30s is the age of the classic horror films, the 40s is the Monster Mash, the 50s is the B movies, the 60s is a slight resurgence of classic horror, 70s it's, I guess, exploitation, 80s is slasher, 90s I would say probably a down period up until Scream, and then it's a resurgence. Then the 2000s is the remake era, and now it still is the remake era, but that's the best thing I can come up with for the 2000s. But anyway, the thing is with this film is that it was shot, you know, as a normal horror film and stuff, so it doesn't have the comedy of the second film, or it doesn't have the gritty realism of the first film, but it's pretty well the way it was shot. It was directed by Jeff Burr, which the only other films of note I will say is he directed The Stepfather 2 right before this, and in the mid-90s he would direct Puppet Master 4 and 5, followed up by a sequel which I actually do enjoy, which I got to revisit it in the original one day, Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings. I remember having fun with that. And that's basically all of the ones of note. He's done other movies like Night of the Scarecrow, The Boy with the X-Ray Eyes. Sounds like a B movie. So it sounds like he's mostly a B. He sounds like he's a B movie director, but he's a B movie director that knows what the heck he's doing. But anyway, the thing is with this is that in order to avoid the X rating, Bob Shea and other people apparently took the film and re-edited it, and in the process kind of destroyed some of the scenes, how they flowed and stuff. And Burr got so upset with this, he wanted to have his name taken off the prints, but it was too late, so he was kind of upset, which is why I'm glad they actually did an unrated cut. It's not his original cut from what I understand, but it's probably pretty close to what his original cut would have been, or at least the closest. And I don't remember if it was his decision to change the ending, but I actually liked the changed ending, which I will address during this review. But I can understand why Burr would be upset that the studios would go behind his back and do it. Why don't you just have him do the changes? I just hate it when studios go behind a director's back or tell the director how to freaking direct the movie. Because look at it this way. Studios, You hire the director to direct the movie, meaning that you are placing your confidence in the director. When he or she is the one directing the movie, the ending movie is going to be what their vision of the movie wants to be. If you wanted something else, then you should have A, found a creative director who could have interpreted it that way, or 2, direct it yourself from the get-go. I mean, Fox is notorious for this. We all know, what they did with David Fincher and what they've been doing more recently. Hopefully it will change now that they got a new CEO. And of course, the 2 Exorcist prequels also suffered from that. This is a psychological horror film. This is what we wanted. We wanted blood and guts and a woman that says C and A words. But from what I understand, at least Bob Shea acknowledges he made a mistake with this by doing it to director. And Burr seems to have, I guess, buried the past a little bit, I would say, just based on how he's talking about it. I didn't watch all of what he said in the thing so far, but it's just from what I've heard, it sounds like he's at least come to terms with it and is happy that at least they get to hear his side of the story. And for a film, this film barely made anything. It was produced on a $2 million budget and it made almost $6 million, so it made a decent gross, but not as much as they wanted, I guess. But well, not that surprising. The '89 was not a very good year for slasher movies, and this was released in January. And you know what? Even nowadays, you know what happens when a film is released in January. It's usually because the studio has no confidence in it, which is not a good sign. Like Season of the Witch was released there, even though I can enjoy that movie for what it is. Just showed they didn't have a lot of confidence in it. Even The Grey was released. No, I think The Grey was released in February, actually, but around that same time period. So, you guys know what I mean. But anyway, now to the movie. The film it kind of feels like both a sequel and a reboot at the same time, because they do acknowledge some events from the previous films, but at the same time there's kind of a retcon going on. I mean, Leatherface got stabbed with a chainsaw at the end of the second movie. How do you survive that? Superman could survive that. I don't know how Leatherface survived that. So it kind of feels more like a direct sequel to the original film, while maybe acknowledging some of it, but not all of it. And that's why I'm saying both sequel and reboot, because the last time I reviewed this movie, some punk had to come up on here and started acting like I don't know what I'm talking about just because I called this film a reboot, when that's what it feels like. It feels like a reboot. And I even had gotten into a long drawn out argument with him, and I actually did win, considering that I pointed out the fact that it mostly acknowledges the first film, meaning that it'd be a reboot sequel, therefore it would still be a reboot. The movie after this feels even more like a reboot, but that's another story, another video. Now, the plot is that we begin with an opening narration that acknowledges the first film. We talk about Sally and her brother. Then it mentions that only one of the killer families stood trial, and of course, just by the name, we're going to guess it was the cook, which, when I was doing the commentaries with Jeffrey, I always called the cook the brother, but I think it's more like their father or something. But anyway, I'm getting back to the thing. He's the only one that stood trial, which it would have been funny to see his trial. Never mentions what happens to Chop Top, so I'm guessing that they're acknowledging him dying into Hitchhiker's dead in the first movie. So Leatherface escapes, and he somehow ends up with another family, which is supposed to be related to them, and they're Sawyers. So I'm guessing that maybe they're cousins, or maybe the father and the mother divorced or something and took some of the kids or something. But I'm just going to assume more likely they're cousins, because it's never explained in the movie. So I'd be more saying that they're cousins. But like I said, that's one of the things about this movie. It's kind of hard to place all the movies chronologically. Now our main characters we got Michelle, played by Kate Hodge, and her boyfriend Ryan, played by William Butler, who you guys remember I mentioned in a review earlier this one. I believe I mentioned him in Chopping Mall, but I could be mistaken. Yeah, I'm looking... No, it wasn't Chopping Mall, it was Night of the Living Dead, excuse me, Night of the Living Dead, where he played Tom in that movie. And of course, 2 years before this, he was in Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, where he played Michael, who got one of my favorite deaths in the whole movie. Sneak up, hand to the chest, breakneck back, oh, that's gotta hurt. And he's the birthday boy too, so everyone's out there because of him, ha 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 ha. You want to blame all those people's deaths, blame it on William Butler. Anyway, they're traveling through Texas, and of course they stop near a security checkpoint where we see a lot of bodies, which this shows off the great special effects in this movie, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think they were done by KMB or something. But whoever did it, this scene alone shows why practical effects have been and always will be superior to CGI. Because if that was done today, it'd probably be CGI and it wouldn't be as effective. Because it does really look like a body that's rotting in the ground in its own filth. And it's one of those ones you're like, yeah. And I don't remember, but I don't remember being that gruesome. I think it's one of the scenes that was kind of cut up by the MPAA, or as Foree likes to call them, the Morricone Puto Association of Assholes, which depending on who's on the board, that's why they are. Because that's actually one of the things in cinema literature we learned about, so I know why they always change and the ratings seem to fluctuate with how strict they are. It's because of who's on the freaking rating board. Like, if I was on the rating board, Psycho, the original, would not have an R rating. It'd be PG-13. But anyway, eventually they reach this last chance gas station where we meet the perverted owner, Alfredo, played by Tom Everett, which he's probably my favorite psychotic character in the series. Tying with Chop Top probably, but him and Alfredo in the hitchhiker Alfredo and Chop Top all in a conversation would be funny. Even if it's just their actors just doing it for the audience. You know that'd be funny, because Alfredo just funny, like, it's my place! It's my place! I'm in my place! What do you have to be like, you know what he did? It's just Tom Everett, he really gets into character and he sells it. And he's over the top in the good way. How he's perverted, it's funny, like touching the Bible. Like, I know that gets in a deleted scene where he's touching the Bible, like, Lord, please help me from not looking. Now I'm looking in there. And then with the shotgun, it's my place. And of course, we also meet Tex, played by a young Viggo Mortensen, which is, I believe, the first movie I saw him in before I saw him in Lord of the Rings. And of course, after this, he also was in the Psycho remake where we saw his ass. Why do we need to see that? Anyway, eventually the couple end up on a road where they're rammed off the road, and eventually they meet Ken Foree's character named Benny, I believe. I think it's Benny. Yeah, Benny. I don't know why I wanted to say Betty, but I guess I've been watching Angry Grandpa too many times, but Benny, and they eventually meet Leatherface, and Benny's kind of a survivalist character. You could tell he probably was in the army. I'm guessing, based on the character's age, he probably was in Vietnam. Or at least in the military. Him and Burt Gummer together would be an unstoppable duo. Well, that's just me. But Ken Foree does a great job as Benny. And I have to say, this is my favorite character he's portrayed. And Ken Foree, I know him. I originally know him, of course, from Kenan and Kel. Kenan! Kel! And, of course, he was in the original Dawn of the Dead. He had a cameo in the remake. And, of course, he was in 2 of Rob Zombie's films. He played a small character, I believe, in The Devil's Rejects. And, of course, he played Joe Grizzly in the remake of Halloween. I'm going to cut that mask right off your face. You should have cut the mask off, and then that would have pissed Michael off, but then that's just me. That's how I would have shot the scene. But anyway, Benny is probably my favorite character in the movie because he kicks so much ass. Like when he opens fire in the house. And his fights with Leatherface are just epic, hand to hand and stuff. And of course, one of the changes that was made is the fact that he lives throughout the final movie, which, if you watch the extended ending, you can see how he originally was supposed to die, but I actually thought of a way that you could actually make it to where he survived, is that, for one thing, the chainsaw running throughout his death scene is in the water. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that how long that chainsaw is in the water, it would have stopped by then. So I have a feeling that the chainsaw probably wouldn't have been as powerful even if it was still on. So it probably would have not have been enough to kill him, maybe just cut him barely and then the chainsaw would have stopped. And also in the original ending, it's a little too convenient the chainsaw finally does submerge and stop after Benny dies, so I have no problem with him surviving. The one thing that from the original ending I wish they would have kept in is Viggo Mortensen's last death thing, because it would have been a little bit more fitting for his character, especially with something he says earlier in the movie. And also him, of course, it would have been said it'd be like, how the heck did he survive being set on fire? He's a motherfucking king of Gondor. He can survive that easily. I know I had to throw in a Lord of the Rings reference. I know I had to do it. And of course, when I first watched this movie with my uncle, he had a very good thing to say when one of the characters got shot. Got the old man. Those of you who know the movie probably know what he was talking about. And I haven't seen the rest of the original ending because I had to stop at a point because we were starting the commentary. But I do like all the reshot ending better, especially since Alfredo finally gets what's coming to him. I'm not going to say what, but now the family in this movie, of course, we got Leatherface, we have his daughter, we got Mama Sawyer, we got Alfredo, who is only hinted at being a Sawyer. Then we got Leatherface's two male family members, who one of them kind of picks on him, but he gets picked on back. Then of course we got Viggo Mortensen's character Tex. Oh yeah, Tinker. That was the guy's name, played by Joe Unger. You guys will remember from the deleted scene from Escape from New York, but this is the movie I always remember from. Which, like it when he picks on Leatherface, throws the Walkman in. Now reach in there and get it. But the family, I do like them. They have a charm to them and stuff. I mean, I have to say the family characters in all these movies always have a charm to them, even from Part 4. But the only one in Part 4 that has a charm to him is Matthew McConaughey's character, and that's because it's Matthew McConaughey. Even as a psycho, over-the-top killer, he still has a charm to him. But he's the only one in that movie. He's the only thing watchable about that movie, in my opinion. But yeah, when I do the rest of the movies again, I'll talk about him. But the acting in this movie I thought was pretty good. I mean, nothing Oscar-worthy or anything with that, but it's believable. I mean, even though he's not in the movie that much, William Butler did an okay job. The best performances in the movie, I'd say, would be Kate Hodge, R.A. Mihalieff, excuse me if I mispronounced it, as Leatherface, and ironically, Kane Hodder did his stunts, so Kane Hodder played Leatherface technically. Ken Foree as Benny was epic. And then, of course, Tom Everett as Alfredo, and like I said, Viggo Mortensen as Tex. All of the cast did a great job, so it's kind of sad that this movie got basically crapped on just because of the fact it's a horror movie. That's the one thing I really hate about a lot of these critics, is that they always seem to crap on horror movies unless it's something deep. Like, I like The Exorcist, and I'm glad that it shows that horror movies can at least get Oscar nominations, but I hate the fact that only the ones that have a deep message are the ones that get praised. I mean, I don't mind deep movies, but sometimes you watch a movie just to be entertained. Like, this is, like, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, from that title, you could tell it's just a movie that's going to be there just for entertainment value. And I know a lot of the older, old-school critics, like Ebert and stuff, cannot see the appeal of it, but that's why I think that's one of the reasons why I think that people should just go based on what the critics say. And that's why I'm glad I don't always listen to the critics. I will mention I will agree with them if I agree with their viewpoint, but if I don't, I'm not going to spend time worrying over it, unless of course I read them like, really, that's what you're saying about that? Like what Ebert said about Silver Bullet, do you remember? Thinking that the movie's only good because it has stupid thing. I'm like, really? Really? But like I said earlier at the beginning of this review, I'm glad this movie at least has a fan base, even if it's a slight one, and I really hope this gets a bigger fan base as years go on, because like I said, this is a slightly underrated sequel, and I'm actually happy that I got the DVD in my collection. Now all I gotta do is get the good special editions of the first two movies, and I'll be set. Anyway, my rating for Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, 4.5 out of 5. It's not a perfect film, but it is an enjoyable movie. I mean, it has very great special effects, good acting. I mean, like I said, nothing Oscar-worthy. The shots are all stable. There's no shaky cam, so Jeff Burr is a capable director, and I've seen another one of his movies, so I could attest to that more. The score was pretty good. The use of rock sound was pretty good. The cameo by Caroline Williams as her character for the second movie, interesting. When, like I said, that's one of the continuity things. You're like, what? And of course, like I said, other than those little edits in the theatrical cut, the movie's very good. If you haven't seen it and you're a fan of the original film or its sequel, I suggest you check it out.